For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Just a quick reminder, everyone, that this episode had some issues with the internet connection, so it might cut out a little bit, but we still get the bulk of the interview, so I hope you enjoy it. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're talking to Joe Carter all this week and about his resource, the NIV Life Hacks Bible. Joe, as we talked yesterday, I mentioned that there are, several hundred articles, and I guess just off the top of your head, how many articles did you actually write? Do you know?
There's 365, one for each day.
Okay, 365 articles. And so, as I got the NIV Life Hacks Bible and as I began to open it, I was kind of wondering where to begin. And so you do, have some of that answered in the introduction. You have several different ideas of how one can take this Bible and open it and begin to use it. And so where would you encourage people to begin when using this resource? If somebody came up to you and said, hey, how do I use this best?
I always recommend just start where you're most interested. And one of the reasons there's so many tips and techniques is because not everything will work for the same person. So there's so many ideas in there to kind of mix and match to find what works for you. So my advice is just kind of look through it, something interesting, and then apply that over the next couple of days and apply it to your life and see how it works out, and then just move on from there.
Yeah, and that's helpful. I think you give some different ideas in the introduction. You can, I think at the very beginning, it's got the articles listed, and you can just kind of search by some of the headings of those articles, which that's kind of how I began. Just some of those articles were capturing my attention. But then towards the back, you've got an index of all the spiritual habits listed, and so that's another approach that you recommend taking, is just going searching by the habit and going through that. So again, that's very helpful. Joe, as you may know, with Reformed Youth Ministries, we do a lot of work with students. We have summer conferences for our students. We have a youth leader training conference, and we're trying to constantly equip the parents to disciple their students. And so we're all about the discipleship of the next generation. So how would you encourage a youth worker or a parent to use this alongside their student or child? What are some ways in which you might just encourage them to use this?
Well, I think there are two broad approaches a teacher or parent could take. One is to focus on a particular area of focus, such as prayer or engaging scripture. Just read numerous entries on that topic and kind of work through the practical guides on that. And the other would just kind of be to take 6 to 8 areas that you want your child to develop. Mm-hmm. Choose entries based on your interest or what you think they'll be interested in, and just kind of create your own program from those entries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea. And I was thinking, as you're saying that, it could be taking a student, or I guess thinking more as a parent with a child. Like you said, letting them pick something that they're interested in first, maybe a specific habit. But then also, it might be a good idea for a parent to maybe look at a habit that they know their child really struggles in, and know that their child might not be strong in this area, and say, look, I know you might not be interested in this, but let's start here, because I know this is a little bit of a weakness for you. Say it obviously in a loving way, but that could be a helpful way to just a parent, again, to come alongside them and disciple them in an area of weakness, and can utilize that for a season. And so in light of that too, what's some advice you might have for some people that consider themselves, just lazy or unmotivated, as you're bringing up spiritual habit development and, spiritual disciplines and things like that? Sometimes people hear those words and just think, I'm a lazy person, I'm unmotivated. That's not really for me. What's some advice you might have for those people?
My advice is always to start small and make the process as easy as possible. And the book of Proverbs talks a lot about sluggards and the lazy person. And in this book, I have an entry called Small Steps for Sluggards, in which I recommend taking small actions, making micro changes by developing micro habits to help overcome the kind of inertia of sluggardliness. And this helps us get started so that we can change our patterns of behavior. And for example, if you're struggling to read a chapter of a scripture, just start smaller. Start by reading a single psalm or even a single verse from Proverbs. And then what often happens is when we start small, when we overcome the inertia of getting started, we start reading the scripture. We read one verse, and then we read another verse. We read a couple more verses. And before we know it, we've developed the habit of reading a lot more than we do. So it's overcoming that initial inertia, initial getting started that can often, if we feel like I don't have time to sit down and read 2 chapters of the Bible, if we found out we diverse, we start reading more, just kind of flows from there. We kind of developed habit based on that, starting small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you said something which you said a micro habit. Could you explain what a micro habit is a bit more?
Micro habits are when you take a bigger habit, such as reading the Bible. Reading the Bible is a big habit, but it could mean many things. It could be reading a letter from Paul every week, or it could be reading a chapter a day, or reading through the Bible once a year. And breaking that down into something smaller that's easily to do, usually within one day, or that you can do daily, such as just reading one psalm a day, or just reading a couple of verses a day, or memorizing a couple of words of a verse every day, and things like that. Just kind of start smaller to get you going, because like I said before, the inertia is really what causes to have a hard time developing these habits. But once we get started, it makes the whole process a lot easier. So starting with micro habits can really kind of get us going in a way that develops the kind of broader based habits.
Yeah, that's some very good advice for all of us. I mean, even those who might consider themselves more disciplined, there are going to be certain areas in your life where everybody struggles with discipline, and so thinking in terms of these micro habits, kind of baby steps of, okay, let's just do this small piece of this today, and I think applying that to Scripture specifically. One verse a day is better than no verses a day. So that's a good place to start. Well, thanks for that advice, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks.